Hi, this is Ryan from byRyan.com. I just ate a bunch of peanut butter, so probably not the best thing to do before doing a tutorial, but let's dive in. I want to take you behind the scenes on one of the most recent tutorials that I did to show you all about every layer and effect that I used along the way and all of the settings and what they mean. On these tutorials, sometimes I just show you what to do and I don't explain why. This way, I can go through everything and tell you why and give you some cool tips along the way. Like, did you know if you hit the U button, you see only the keyframes for that layer? It's one of the most useful features of After Effects and I use it all the time. So, thanks for watching. So here we go. We have this scene right here where I recreated a meme and I had the background fall off. And I want to go a little bit over how I created this background. So you can see right here, here's the background just of itself. And it goes and then it falls down. And there's several effects that I use to take care of this. The first one are these turbulent displaces. So without that, it just goes down like this. Now, as you can see, it still does have a little bit of curves, and that's because I'm using the Bezier Warp or the Bezier Warp, however you want to pronounce it. If you use my favorite shortcut key, which is U, you can see the keyframes for this device. Whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. You can see the keyframes. So I start with the top left moving first, and that starts moving down as these keyframes start. And the final keyframes, everything's at the bottom. And I just kind of offset them a little bit. These are the turbulent displaces. So let's just look at these. There's really two groups. There's the top vertices, which are these ones right here. Top left, top right, and right top. I don't know why they didn't continue with the naming convention for that. So we've got those. And then we've got all of the lower ones, which I just started a little bit later so that the top starts to drop and then everything else comes with it. Now, if you look at this while we do that, I then am going to add one turbulent displace. This one I've set to turbulent with a size of 118. We can see with and without that, and that is being animated with amount. So first the amount is 0, and as it gets to here we go up to 8, and then from there it's 35, and then that kind of gives it that nice little extra wrinkle as it goes down. If I increase the size or decrease it, it makes it more or less wavy. I could also animate the evolution as it goes to make it feel like it's twisting as it falls. So that's with that. And then to give it a little extra detail, I added a second turbulent displace. This one's set to twist with an even bigger size. This gives it just a bigger amount, and I duplicated it so it has the exact same progression of amounts going up to 35, and that's that one. And then for the finer details, I wanted to include one more turbulent displace, which you can see here. Oops, that's the second one. I like to collapse so I can see more what I'm doing. So this one I set to bulge and had a smaller size with it. And so that one also comes down and gives it those wrinkles. All together, that's what it looks like to be able to give that look like it's a sheet kind of coming down. I wanted it to look like cloth, so I added the extra turbulent displaces and Bezier Warps and animated those to make it fall down. Now, to give it the 3D angle to match the original source, I went ahead and used this 3D thing right here. Now, I want to show you something interesting. I threw in an adjustment layer here. Let me show you without that adjustment layer. There's nothing going on with the layer. There's no effects. But without it, you can see the wall is actually in front of my butterfly. So in order to see the butterfly, I have to put that on, and then that breaks the 3D layers. You can see this is a group of 3D and this is a group of 3D, and by not having the adjustment layer, they all go together as one 3D plane. So if you ever have multiple 3D objects that it's really not behaving the way you want to, go ahead and try to put an adjustment layer in between the layers that you want to break up so you can bake things as you need to. Moving on with this, I've got all of the options on my bird right here, but there's one thing that I had to include which I didn't talk about in the original stream, and that's this third slider for wing offset. Now, as you can see, when I do that, it actually gives me direct control over these wings to give a further level of refinement. Without that, the wings kind of start at 0. Oops, let me just set it to remove all keyframes. And you can see they goes up and down, but I kind of wanted to have, rather than up and down from the center, I wanted it to be up a little more. So I used a wing offset to do that. Let me undo a little bit so we still have all of our original keyframes. And to see what that's affecting, let me go into these options right here, and we're going to look at the rotation on this one so we can see this expression right here, and let me just break it down. And I did this really quickly, so I could have named these variables to make this a little bit more concise. But so we have math.sine, which is what we talked about, and then the time is multiplied by this layer, body, effect, wing speed, slider. I put the effects on the body layer, and this is important because I knew both of these wings were going to reference the same sliders. So if I had put that slider on on this layer, I would have to animate each of those separately. By putting the sliders on a separate layer, I'm able to use one slider to affect multiple layers, and that's an effect that I use a lot. So anyways, going back into here, we're going to go down into R. I press R for rotation to get that up. This is the second wing. You can see I used 180 minus the wing. Just without that, they're essentially the same. But by using 180, oh, and that's the other thing with the offset. On this other one, I subtracted the offset, whereas on this one, I added the offset. So those were the little different things that I did to make the offset work properly because they're inverted. On this side, I had to subtract whatever the offset was from the original, and this one, I added the offset to the original. So we have the math.sine plus times the wing speed, and all of that is then multiplied by body effect wing amount slider. So the wing speed, if you don't have any of these, if you just do sine of the time, I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. So if you just have sine of the time, oops, I need an extra thing out of there. It only animates, it only rotates from -1 to +1. And that's not enough rotation. You can see right here, if you go into the graph editor and click on this enable expressions, you can see it goes from -1 to -1. Now let me undo a couple of times, get all of my compositions back here. And now if you look at this expression, now you can see that when the wing slider is higher, a wing amount, wing offset. So wing offset really tracks with what these values are. And when you can say wing amount, when that goes up, the amount that the wings flap go up. So this chart right here, which you get to by clicking the graph editor and then making sure that your expression has this little show post expression graph in there, so you can see what the wing flapping is actually doing. And this is very handy for troubleshooting. So that's a little bit about what I did in there. And then I just want to go into this comp because I made this back wall and I'm very proud of how this came out. I think this looked really great compared to the original, and I just want to show you things. So first is how I did this bush right here. I started out with a green star. I used a poly star and I put a bunch of points on it to already give it that little rough shape to it. But then I used the Turbulent Displace. This one was size 37 to just kind of get the rough size that I want. And then I used a mount to take it from here to where I thought looked good. And I didn't want to have it too high because then I noticed I started getting these phantom blobs. So I just made it high enough to where you don't all see that. I just had to check to make sure I was still recording there, didn't want to lose all of that. And then I added a second Turbulent Displace for twist with a really low size just to give it that extra fine detail. And again, this is just kind of to eye. I just kind of adjusted this to where I thought it looked good. And then I duplicated this layer for this one. And then let's see. Yeah, I kind of adjusted the settings slightly so that it looked a little bit different. And then I gave it the different color. So those are the bushes. This window right here is actually a lot's going on to make this. I wanted this to be all one solid shape so that when I right clicked on it to get to layer styles and then bevel and emboss, that's what gives us this shading on the sides and top. I wanted it to be all one solid object so that we didn't have separate divisions. When you look at this, you know, it's seamless along the areas right along here. So in order to do that, I used several rectangles all in the contents to make one solid object. So let's start off with the first one. Obviously we got this bar going across the middle, nothing special there. With this one, I made one bar up here just to start it out, and if you want, there's controls where you can make it bigger. You can, control that. So I made a box, and that's just done with this tool right here, is how you make different shape layers. So I made that box, but then I went to add, and I used a repeater, and I set that repeater to have 4 copies, not 43 copies, 4 copies, and I did a transform 0 in the X, and then Y, I just adjusted this until it looks like it fit the area. So that's this guy right here. The final amount was 4 copies, and each was moved 316 pixels to get that. So that plus that, we've now got those layers. We've now got these two. I could have done with a repeater as well. I probably should have. I just kind of got in a hurry and made 2 separate devices. So actually, let me fix that and make it a little bit more streamlined. So I'm going to add a repeater. I'm going to adjust this to just make 2 copies. And then we're going to position this negative till it looks about good. And then finally, in addition to that, we have this frame. Now to make the frame, I did 2 rectangles. There's a bigger rectangle, and then there's a smaller rectangle within there, and then I added a merge path, and I said mode subtract. So if you did like add, that would just make one big thing. If you do intersections, that would be just the middle. Exclude intersection is pretty much the same effect as subtract. And to kind of show you, if I was to move one of these around, then you would kind of be able to see different thicknesses. I actually, in drawing the second one, I used the corners to kind of make sure that, okay, this corner lines up there, and then when I drug it down, that corner lined up there, just to show you that process. I'm going to delete this path and make another one. So we're going to line that up about here, and then line that up there, and then that's a rectangle, and then I need to move it into there. It's a little bit wonky compared to the other. I'm going to just delete all of that extra information. There was an extra transform in there, and that kind of gives you that. But if I wanted to make anything thicker or thinner, you uncheck this so that it doesn't move all together, and then you can adjust the width and the height to give you what you want. And so all together with that, let's bring those layers in. And that's the window. And then I did the same thing for the outer frame of the window. It's just two rectangles that subtract from each other. And then for the background, there's a couple of ways I could have done this. I actually used the dropper tool to sample from the original picture. And so I started, that gave me this color right here, and I thought it needed to be a little bit more vibrant. So I added these curves here to just really saturate the colors a little bit extra. So that's on the first layer. And then I noticed there was a highlight in the original, so I added just a layer with a mask on it. I pressed the M button for mask, and I added a lot of feather to the mask. So this is a really quick way to add a highlight, is to just have a solid color and let me delete this mess. And then what I do is I just go up here, go to ellipse tool, I drag like that, and then I pushed MM to get the extra mask options. Just pressing M1 will get you the mask path, but MM will get the path options. And then I slid up this feather right here to get just a nice little highlight that I added. And that's how that looks like. And then I noticed still that it wasn't quite the right color, and I just wanted to add a little bit more warmth to it overall. So I added a another layer, solid, no matte, and so this is just a total solid color. And then as you can see, I used this matte feature and created another layer, which I used a gradient ramp to go from black to white, and then I used curves so that it got to black a little bit quicker. And then I used that as an alpha or luma matte. So as we drag this over here, this says luma matte. If I do an alpha matte, you don't see anything because there's no transparency in it. You can reverse this luma matte if you want, so you can get it from top to bottom. And so that's kind of how I did the coloring right there. And then boom, all of that together is the background. If you hover over this comp name and hit tab, you can go to anywhere that's used this. And I used this background in the first shot and the last shot of my video. So I'm going to go over here to the first shot. We're going to take a look at it. And as you can see, I used, I'm going to hit R for rotation. We're going to get out of this thing. And I used some Y rotation to just give it that little bit of an angle to make it 3D. And so all together we have that. And this guy, again, I just did all of the keyframes in the body, pressing U to see the keyframes. So you can see its little path kind of comes from down here to behind my head. To get it behind my head, I took the original footage that I had here, I pre-comped it with to make it transparent. So going into this pre-comp, you can see here's the original footage, and I use the is it Control Shift D? Yep, Control Shift D to split the layer. So going back into here, I started here, Control Shift D, and I used the Roto and Refine brush to rotoscope myself out. And then after I finished that, I added a little bit of feather and I dropped the contrast. Now just to show you from the beginning so that nothing is confusing, I'm going to do this whole process again. So we'll go back to the beginning. I'm going to duplicate this footage, and then I will delete this just to show you how easy it is to make. Move this up to the top. Come on there. Sometimes it's hard to get it to scroll. So okay, now it's in front of everything, and then go layer, pre-compose, and we'll call this masked Ryan. And then we're going to leave everything in the all attributes in the original composition, like its scale and all of that. We're going to leave all of that there, and then we're going to create something new. But when I do that, it jumps to the beginning, and so I just lost my time. So again, I push tab here, go back here, and now when I double click this, it jumps me to where that start value is. I Control Shift D to duplicate that. I go back over here and I go to the end, double click again. I use use Control Arrow to advance one frame. I hit Control Shift D again. And now, essentially, we have just the, I can even delete these if I want to. So now we've got a section that matches exactly with the time that's in here. Although sometimes it looks like it missed a frame. So I'm going to drag this one more. Yep, just to get that. And then, yep, so we got the whole thing. I just had to make sure that it covered the whole time. And so now I'm going to go to the first frame. I'm going to use this Roto brush tool. Double click here to get into the layer view. You can't use the Roto brush in the composition view. I'm going to use Control to make the Roto brush a little bit bigger. We'll select the hands and body. Get my legs in there. Get this little bit in there. Get this hand in there. Some of this stuff is off camera, so you don't necessarily need, I didn't necessarily need to get this all perfect, but I like being a perfectionist. So I'm hitting Alt, and then I'm subtracting that section. I use the middle mouse button to drag around this. Again, Alt to remove that, Alt to remove that. If I really wanted to get picky, I could come in here and make the brush, holding Control a little bit, holding Control to make the brush smaller, and then holding Alt to subtract out that, and really getting that extra area in there a little bit smaller, and get all of that out of there. And then, are there any other details? Yep, let's add that section. Getting precise here really helps it figure it out when it starts to move. And then the other thing I want to do is subtract to that area. And then we're going to add these glasses. If you watch the original one, you'll see where my glasses actually key out. I was just going for speed rather than accuracy, but we can fix that this time. So now that this is a little bit, get this picture frame up there. Get that picture frame out of the back of my head. So now we've got a mask. We don't need to think about any of this. And then you can kind of go forward a little bit, and then it's going to figure it out. It's propagating this brush here as we're going. So it's going to figure out what this looks like. Boop, boop, boop. You can see as we're going here, this little thing is going forward, and I'm using the plus and the minus to zoom in right here. Look at it go. What exciting progress. So this is the fun part of the animation, the waiting for the computer to do its thing. If you don't trust it, you can just, okay, let's see. So now I can scrub through that section now that it's propagated. And I just wanted to make sure it looked good as it continued to track. Sometimes, as you do this, it will, sometimes as you do this, it might make a mistake. So I like to go a little bit at a time just to have it propagate. So now I went forward a little bit more in time. It's propagating from there to here. When I originally did it, I just jumped straight to the edge. Let's see, look at this. Look at this. See, it's already messed up my glasses. So let's see when it did that. So it had the glasses there. It was getting a little confused. So I'm just going to go right here. I'm going to add those glasses in. It gets a little bit confused. And whenever I do that, anything propagated forward, it loses. So that's why you don't want to jump too far ahead when you propagate, because if it messes something up, then we just have to propagate this again. So we kind of go through and let's see, it lost my glasses. When did it lose my glasses? Looks like right at around here. And you can also, if you just want to frame by frame this, if it's a complicated thing, I just hit the control right arrow and then I can drag through and make sure that in each frame, undo, in each frame it's really recognizing what my glasses are. So control forward. And this is the part where I start to think maybe it would have been easier to just actually rotoscope it rather than roto brush it. But hey, them are the breaks. I'm going to use Alt to remove that little bit right there. Kind of refine this a little bit. It really is not a fan of those glasses, which is why I let it just make my glasses disappear in the original, because, you know, how important is this? If this was a Hollywood movie, you absolutely better believe that all of that is important. But for a little web tutorial, it, you know, sometimes it doesn't matter. So, to your own detriment, decide that. If you're okay with just letting the computer go with it, which for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to move it to the end here. I pressed the O to get to the last frame. So now it's propagating. There's 280 frames. Okay, now while this effect is doing, I want to take a little bit of time to talk to you directly. We're just going to skip over this a little bit. This is the unfun part of animating. And the thing that I do not like about the Roto brush tool is if you start to skip around, it'll forget the progress that you made. That's why it's important to freeze it as soon as you're happy with it. So we're going to go ahead and click freeze. Wait for this progress bar to finish, and then I'll be right back in After Effects. Here we go. So now that we've done that, I've frozen the timeline, because until you freeze it, it continuously recomputes it. It took it a little while, but now that it's frozen, you can scrub through and verify that everything is good. Now, as I was noticing, the eyes aren't perfect, but there's only so much that I really care to actually do that, and then I just let it, I click towards the end, let it propagate, and then I froze it. So now that it's frozen, you can look here and you can see that the edges are really sharp. So the first thing that I like to do is bring down this contrast. And I'm just clicking and dragging to the side and maybe upping the feather. So you can see that gives it a nice little softer edge. And to get rid of some of this, I usually will bring this in a little bit. And I just like to reduce chatter a little bit. Nobody likes chatter, so let's reduce that chatter. And there we go, with and without. You know, it doesn't do a perfect job on the hair, but again, we're not going through and masking this strand by strand. We just let it do its thing. So now, hitting tab, going back here. And we can see this is the masked version. So now this this guy comes up over here. he flutters over here. And then by this point, I actually, to get him to come in front of me, I don't need this layer anymore because the background has already dropped down. So because of that, I'm able to stop the layer by pressing Alt closed bracket, and that shortens it right there. And now all of a sudden this can come in front of me because that layer has stopped. And done. Hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you have any ideas of what you want me to cover next, leave a comment below. I'm serious. I will cover it just for you. So keep animating, enjoy your day, and thanks for watching. Something like that.